Hello out there. Welcome back to another edition of the Contrarians. This is a regular Contrarians show. It's one of our shows where one of us on the team, at this time, Jamie Laszlo. Say hello, Jamie.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Yeah. So we've got Jamie with us today, and so this is one of the shows where one of us on the team has a slightly or maybe very contrarian choice for favorite album by a band. And this week we're going to be talking about Mott The Hoople, good old glam band from the early 70s. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a history of the band, and then I'll be turning it over to Jamie, who will tell us his controversial contrarian choice for favorite Mott The Hoople album. This is a band that started as the Doc Thomas Group. They actually put out an album in Italy only. Essentially the lineup that became Mott The Hoople, without an Ian Hunter involved in the situation. But what happened was they move on. They have a lot of different names. Guy Stevens gets involved. He's A&R for Island, and they have auditions, and they actually find Ian Hunter. So Ian Hunter comes into the band. He's kind of a big change with the band. He is one of the key writers. He obviously is the guy who has that look that he's kept the whole time, that look with the sunglasses on and the curly hair. He's considered a little bit of a Bob Dylan guy. He really likes Bob Dylan. Anyways, they put out a debut album, 1969, Mott The Hoople, with kind of an MC Escher thing going on with it. It's pretty rocking kind of record. It goes to 66 on the UK charts, skirts the bottom of the Billboard 200 at 185. Mad Shadows comes in 1970. That's a UK 48 on that one. Still, Guy Stevens is involved. He's a producer. He's a bit of he's a troubled soul. He's an eccentric dude. He eventually goes on and does Clash London Calling. That's one of his famous things. He dies, I think, shortly thereafter in his 30s. But anyways, he's involved as sort of a Svengali of the band at this point early on. Wildlife comes in 1971. That's their third one. It's considered maybe the mellowest of all of them. Brain Capers, 1971 as well. This one is just doesn't make the charts in the US at all. It's kind of a bubbling under situation. The band isn't doing that well at this point. They're right in this sort of new glam scene that's coming up. They kind of have the look, they have the songs, they're kind of Rolling Stones like, kind of glam, a little bit of David Bowie to them, some Bob Dylan to them. But at this point, they're deep in debt. They're on the verge of breaking up. And a chance meeting with David Bowie runs into David Bowie offering them the All the Young Dudes song, and this becomes a big hit for them. They were actually offered Suffragette City first of all. Then what happens is they have the album All the Young Dudes, and David Bowie actually produces the album, and they actually do rather well with this record. They're on their way. It's a US 89, so this is the rescue of the band. So right here in 1972, they are squarely one of the glam bands. There is no real glam sound out there in the world. I just did 2 episodes of my History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff podcast, 2 episodes very recently, not the latest episode, but the previous 2 that are on glam. And there is no central sound, but there's a central sort of look. But if you could say there's a central sound, Mott The Hoople would be pretty darn close to it in all the different things they do. They're actually closest to the mean median average of an actual glam band when it comes to sound. Anyways, so they have that record. That's their 5th album. Mott comes out in 1973, and it's a UK number 7, US number 35. This is a band that you often see on all those US ticket stubs and US posters as a sandwich band or a headline band or at the bottom of the bill. They just always seem to be one of these bands on these weird bills all over America. So they actually do a pretty good job of roaming around the states. After that, we get a 7th album from them, just called The Hoople. I've got a few props here. Here's a couple of the compilations. There's your rock and roll queen comp. Here's your greatest hits comp. There's a Brain Capers on CD. There's a Mott. I think this is probably my favorite Mott the Hoople album. There's your lyrics on the inside. Anyways, they have this Mott album. It's a confusing name of a band, anyways, but they have an album called Mott, and then they have a last album called The Hoople, which is pretty bizarre. Anyway, so the Hoople comes out in '74, and by this point, one of the most important things about it is one of the founding members, Mick Ralphs, who's also a singer in the band, and he's written some songs. He actually has written some songs with Mott the Hoople that he carries over into Bad Company, and Bad Company becomes famously famous, really big. One of the first bands, actually the first band to put out an album on Swan Song in the States. I think what is it first in the UK? It might have been the Maggie Bell or something first in the UK. Anyways, they're the second biggest band on Swan Song. This is Led Zeppelin's private imprint, and they go off to big fame. So Bad Company starts as a super group simply because mainly the most famous guy, even more famous than Paul Rodgers and Simon Kirke, is Mick Ralphs at this point, because he's been on all these Mott the Hoople albums except this last one. So he's not on the Hoople. After this, Ian Hunter's out of the band. There seems to be a bit of a acrimonious breakup because there's some subterfuge where Ian is already sort of thinking of a solo career, and he goes on to a pretty successful solo career. He has that pretty big hit with Cleveland Rocks off of You're Never Alone with a Schizophrenic. I really like Short Back and Sides. He has quite a long string of solo albums. There's never another Mott the Hoople album. And then Mott the Hoople themselves break off into Mott, and they do two albums, Shouting and Pointing, I think, and Drive On, right? And they're very Mott the Hoople-like albums as well. So I hope that's an okay little synopsis of this band. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie now. We're going to talk a little bit more about the music, and he's going to tell us what his favorite Mott the Hoople album is.
All right. That was a very nice history of the band. Very detailed. Good. And you forgot to say they're the only band Queen ever opened for, believe it or not. Yes. Okay. So Mott the Hoople, Martin, I remember when I bought my first Mott the Hoople album. There it is. Yeah. The original one I bought this way back in, I remember like it was yesterday, July of 2020. Yes, people, I knew All the Young Dudes, the song. I saw this album for $3 and I was like, you know what? I should try these guys out. And I loved most of this record. And yes, it's true that my love for this band is less time than COVID's been around. And a lot of people are watching me right now saying, I've loved this band for 50 years. Why do I need to listen to this guy talk about a band that I've been listening to for 50 years?
Yeah.
Well, I hope to win you over. Look, I got the t-shirt on. Once you buy the t-shirt, you're in. Doesn't matter how long you've been here. I'm here now. Yeah. And I have to admit, I have to say this. This band, I cannot believe how good they are. Of all the older bands that I've found out about in my adult life, this is by far my favorite. Cool. I have not liked an older band that I discovered later on this much since my teens, when I was first discovering the Allman Brothers and Aerosmith and Crosby, Stills and Nash for the first time. I'm a big fan now. So first album, but that I bought, but we'll get back to that in 1 second. But I did take a poll on Facebook because I was curious to where Mott the Hoople stands today in 2020. Right. Older people who were around in the 70s, were they into the band or did they just know the one hit? Younger people, do they look back on them do they know them at all? Do they just think of them as a one-hit wonder? So of the options I put, I did 2 polls and I combined the numbers. Number 1 came in as they did other things besides All the Young Dudes. 55 people said that. Right. So they are a one-hit wonder to a lot of people out there. Number 2 was I own a few albums, 48 people. I know their albums, but own nothing was 33 people. Have all their albums was 25, which is kind of high. Don't like them, 12 people said, I don't even like them. That's why I don't own anything. And 2 people said, Mott the what? Never heard of them, which I found surprising. But, I asked around real people in my life, and a lot of people were like, Mott the what? And then I played the one song for them, all the young dudes, and they're like, oh, okay, all right. But I wanted to say the second album I ever bought was the live album.
Right.
And I tell you what, and then when I bought this for it was in a dollar bin, I bought the CD, the extended 30th anniversary. I got to tell you, it's got 13 songs from Broadway and 10 from the Hammersmith show. A lot of them are the same songs, but still, my top 20 favorite live albums of all time has stayed the same for at least 20 years. This has wedged its way into it.
Nice.
Believe it or not, probably right around 17 or so.
Yeah.
Am I winning you over yet?
Absolutely.
50 year.
I'm on board. I'm getting excited about this already.
All right. So let's get into, I got a lot of notes because July 2020, cut me a break. I got a lot of notes. First album, like you said, they loved Dylan. But here's the weird thing about this album. We're Mott The Hoople. We're a new band. Here we are. Put the needle down. What do you think? It's the instrumental version of a Kinks song. You really got me. Is that how you want to introduce yourself? I don't know if you're getting off on the right foot there, Mott and the boys. I know there's no one in the band named Mott. And then it goes into At the Crossroads, and the story goes, because I also bought this box set after the live album, Mental Train, which is a weird title for the box set because it's a working title of Moon Upstairs from Brain Capers. Why would you name your box set after a working title, a demo version of a song? I don't know, but whatever. As I read in the little book here that came with the box set, and sadly enough, Martin, I know it's awful to admit this to an author, but this might be the longest book I've read in like 10 years. Actually, I'm lying. I didn't even finish it. I guess it's too long for me, Martin. I am what I am. But the story goes in the book, in the first few pages that I read, that at the Crossroads, Ian Hunter knew that they were kind of like the Greta Van Fleet of their day. But instead of sounding like Zeppelin, they were sounding like Bob Dylan. And he knew it. And he was in a club and he saw Dylan coming towards him. And he was like, uh-oh, here comes the guy himself. And Bob started singing At the Crossroads and going, Mott The Hoople. And he was like, he's a fan. He's a fan and he knows the song. That's great. But hey, I like the song. I like the album. Laugh at Me is pure Dylan. It has a keyboard. It's more like an organ play. It sounds like Al Cooper playing on like a Rolling Stone. You know how the organ kind of swims around the melody of the song. Critic Mark Williams stated, "It's like my favorite bits of Dylan have been cut out and preserved in a thick, spicy sauce." I think that sums it up for this album. Rock and Roll Queen is on there. Guy Stevens said, we need a rocker on here. There's too many slow songs. Came up with that song, threw it on there. Blazing guitar solo on it. Half Moon Baby. You know, one thing people don't talk about when it comes to this band, most of them don't talk about the band at all, but no one talks about how many extended jams this band has, like 8 to 10 minute long jams. And these songs start off like, okay, this is going to be a straight ahead rock and roll song, probably like 3.5 to 4.5 minutes long. And then this jam just comes out of nowhere. You don't expect it. And before you know it, you're like, is this the same song? Wow. Half Moon Baby is the beginning of that. It's a 10-minute jam. It has gospel influences. Maybe it's a little bit unfocused as a song, but hey, it's their first album. Lukewarm reviews on that album too at the time. Then we go to Mad Shadows, Why We're Here. These are all from the box set too. We'll get back to this album. It's so strange that my favorite is just their second album, you know, when they were not in their prime, but it's called Contrarians, you know. Then their third album, Wildlife. as the band calls Mild Life. I did watch a documentary before this on YouTube. So they were not big fans of this album. They were trying to go for the Neil Young, Stephen Stills sound a little bit. And if you listen to Wrong Side of the River, God, that title sounds like a Neil Young song. They sound like Neil Young when they're singing. It sounds like a Buffalo Springfield era Neil Young song. It does have Whiskey Woman on it, which is this boogie song, but there's 1,000 songs from the early 70s that sounds like that. Lay Down, it has a great single. Now that's a great song. Lay down, lay it on down. This band infused a lot of gospel early on in their music, I believe. And that chorus just, makes you feel good. Swing your pipe, a beer back and forth, sing along. And then original Mixed Up Kid, Home Is Where I Want to Be. Yeah, all right. So it's probably my least favorite album of all of them.
Yeah.
Then we start getting to where people say they start cooking with fire. Brain Capers. Their heaviest album. Some people say their heaviest album ever. I don't know about that, but it's their heaviest to date so far. And if I told you, Martin, that there is a song, a long lost song called Death May Be Your Santa Claus, who would you think sang that song by the title alone? It sounds
King Diamond.
No, it's because of this weird title. It sounds like a Bungie song title. You could totally see that as a Bungie song. And it is frantic. It's a frantic. But here's the thing about this band. They wrote tightly constructed pop rock songs, but they played them in a loose manner, kind of like the Stones. So you got the best of both worlds, loosey-goosey, but tightly constructed. Your Own Backyard, still kind of hanging on to that Dylan influence with the swirling organ going on.
Yeah.
The Journey, man. The Journey is a journey. It starts off with anthemic and earthy at the same time in the beginning, and then it's got a soulful guitar solo. It's 9 minutes long. It's bits of MC5 mixed with Bowie, mixed with Southern rock. This band also had a gift. They had a lot of gifts. They had a gift of doing an extended jam, but making the song sound like it was written by a singer-songwriter at the same time. It was grounded, but also jammy.
Jamie, I'm going to give you a break for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
This is kind of cool. This is an official press release from the Brain Capers album. And nice. I just wanted to read what the label thought of them at the time. So this is Island Records. They said, it's groups like Mott The Hoople. Sorry, there's only one group like Mott, and that's themselves, who make the job of writing descriptive prose a hard task. What superlatives can one dream up that describes to any effect their breath-stopping stage act? How can one truly describe the effect they have on standing room only crowds all over the country? Where does one begin to accurately recount their triumphs in arenas from Huddersfield to Hamburg and back? It's tough, and we're not going to try. All we can say, in all honesty, is that in the past year, Mott The Hoople have emerged as one of the most exciting and dynamic forces in British pop music, and that it's only a matter of time before their success in the field of live concert work is repeated in the even tougher world of sales figures. The thing we think will do it is their new album, Brain Capers, which they have just finished recording and is being released on November 26th. It is a return for Mott to the tougher rock music which dominated their first two albums, Mott The Hoople and Mad Shadows, they call it Mad Shadow here, while retaining some of the musical brilliance of their third LP, Wildlife. So there's it's the mellow one, right? A whole batch of new Ian Hunter and Mick Ralph songs, a couple of great ones by other people, including a heart-stopping version of Dion's Your Own Backyard, all go to make this the best Mott The Hoople album yet. The guts are there, the rawness is there, and the flashes of sheer taste and subtlety, which prove they are no three-chord merchants out for a rave. Ian Hunter, Mick Ralphs, Verdon Allen, Overend, Watts, and Buffin are Mott The Hoople. What they are want they are exactly is in your own head. There's a little no, that's what it says. What they are exactly is in your own head. Play this album really loud. So there you go.
Yeah,
there's some hype, and Jamie, keep hyping us. I'm turning it back to you.
And I did call this Mad Shadows, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because you said, well, they call it here Mad Shadows. I thought maybe
they call Mad Shadow singular in this press release.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and it's amazing they did both these albums in the same year. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is this album cover here on the Mild Life. It looks like a modern band today trying to look retro. In fact, tell me that doesn't look like Opeth.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I actually got a picture. Opeth took a picture of the band about 2 years ago. Look.
Oh, wow.
Now, is that on purpose? Or
I think it is.
By accident?
I think it is. I bet it is on purpose.
One person to ask. Got to ask Michael next time we see him. I almost forgot to point that out.
That's cool.
Yeah, this album cover sucks though, but it's great. And it's got Sweet Angeline on it. That sounds like a band song title to me, Sweet Angeline. Yeah. So I don't know if they're trying to copy a little bit off the band. But yeah, anyways, Brain Capers, great album. Someone told me that was their favorite. Yeah. I would not argue. This is what people call their favorite a lot.
Yep.
And I think it has great songs on it. It's the one that won me over. So, of course, I like it. But I think it has a little bit of filler on it. And here's the problem, too. I know this is 1972. Not a lot of people were covering Sweet Jane at the time. So it was probably kind of new and fresh to cover that song. But since then, I've heard so many covers of Sweet Jane, and it's the first song on the album. But that's just me discovering this band later in life. It's got Mama's Little Jewel. It might be a little bit of a filler song. All the Young Dudes. This is why that song works with Bowie giving it to them. Not every British singer, when he sings, you hear his British accent when he's singing. Bowie and Ian Hunter, you can hear their British accent a lot of the time when they're singing. So a Bowie penned song works really well when Ian is singing it. But I've heard it so many times, you know, but it's got Sucker and One of the Boys. What a great back-to-back song. And One of the Boys starts off sounding like a sped-up Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones. I was comparing them, to my ears anyways. Soft Ground, which kind of sounds like, it's a short song, but it sounds like Big Balls by AC/DC, the way he's kind of talking through it real slowly. And then, so it starts with a cover, and then it ends with Ready for Love. And I understand this is the original version, but I've known the Bad Company version for so long that it's not a cover, but to my ears, it kind of is. So it starts with a cover, ends with a cover. So that's why it's not my favorite. But hey, if people call it their favorite, I'm not going to argue, because from here on out, these are all great albums. Next one, Mott 73. And it's probably the image most people think of when they think of the band. It's your favorite album. This is actually, I think there's a different album cover in the UK. Yeah. It's like pink with a weird head.
Yeah.
Now, when I bought this album and All the Way from Memphis came on, first thing I thought of was, do I know this song? Have I heard this on the radio? I don't know, but it should be on the radio because it's a damn good song. All the Way from Memphis. I think Honolulu Boogie was a single.
Yeah, big song.
Yeah, okay. Violence is like creepy, but rocks. You know, it's kind of creative that way.
Yeah.
The band always gave you little surprises, like Driving Sister. It's 3 minutes. It's like almost 4 minutes long. And it's like the straight ahead rocker. Okay. But then they have this breakdown and there's sound effects halfway through. And you're like, what's that? And when they break it up like that, the 3 and the 4 minute song almost seems longer in your mind, like a 6 minute song when they break things up like that. It has I'm a Cadillac, El Camino Doloroso. And it's this album's extended jam, and it's majestic.
Yeah.
And Mick Rouse, he said in the documentary that I watched, yeah, we just made our masterpiece, and then I left the band. But he went on to bigger things. I'm not going to say better things, but he did go off into bigger things. Then comes the Hoople. And man, oh man, oh man, I tell you what, over the long year and a half that I love this band, this one has been my favorite. coming and going a little bit. You're trying to wrestle with all these albums. Which one do I like best? And this one, it was a contender. There is nothing wrong with this album. Golden Age of Rock and Roll is just, you got the backup singers, you got the horns, you got the hooks, everything I need in a song. Marionette. Now, Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've watched you do shows for a few years now, and I get the impression that you kind of like it when a band does something for the sake of art. Be daring, do it for the sake of art. And even if it doesn't work, I'm still going to kind of like it because you were daring enough to do it in the name of art.
Yeah.
Is that where is that what?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, on this album or on this song, I think they do some things for the sake of art and it works. It's quirky and it rocks. It's very hard to do that at the same time. It sounds like a marionette rocking out. And Alice. This is the thought that came into my head while I was listening to Alice. And I wrote it down and I want to read it. Rock critic Jamie Laszlo, I want to read his thing. I'm kidding. Music is all about emotion. The vocals do not have to be perfect. The instrumentation doesn't have to be on point. If the emotion is being conveyed and I'm relating to that emotion, nothing else matters. That's pretty much music in a nutshell for me. I saw the light for 2 seconds and wrote it down. Yeah. So that's what that song made me think of. Crash Creek Kids, it's jamming out, it's rocking, and then it fades out 100%. You're like, oh, that was a short song. Then it comes back in, and then there's machine gun fire, and then he starts screaming, now you're dead, now you're dead. This is amazing. This is amazing. They keep you on your toes. And Roll Away the Stone. You did a show one time, Martin, where I think it was best last songs on last albums by a band.
Yeah.
And I would put Roll Away the Stone as a contender in that conversation. Cool. It's a great song. And I would put this as a contender as one of the best last albums of all time. And I'm not going to include Mott, just the Mott. Yeah. These albums are like Mott The Hoople with a little bit of Cheap Trick in them, maybe. If you look at this album, it looks like a Cheap Trick album cover to me from the 70s. They're not awful, but, they're not all this that I just talked about. So now we come to, and as you said, this album, the compilation Rock and Roll Queen, it has a song on there called Midnight Lady. You cannot find that anywhere else, even on my box set. It was from the Brain Capers sessions. So you would think it would be one of the bonus songs on the box set, and it's not. So yeah, if you want that song, like me and Cindy used to have, you have to buy this album. And I never saw it for sale. I was in Vegas one time and I saw it for like $4, and I see online it doesn't go for anything. But at the same time, I never see it out there in the wild. So here we go. Here's the star of the show, Mad Shadows with an S. And I hope Tom liked it as much as I do. Now, Guy Stevens, so the story goes, says he wanted them to do a dark album. And they did this album, and people see it as dark and murky. And the band barely likes it. They think it's decent songs with not very good vocals. I love the vocals on this album. I think it's Ian Hunter's best performance. Now we're getting contrarian. Too bad not too many people know about this band, or they'd be going, what are you talking about, Laszlo? Right now, people are like going, if you say so. It's a gospel album. It's a gospel rock album. I find it uplifting. And I love how dark it looks too. The cover, but then it's uplifting because I love things that are balanced in life. So Thunderbuck Ram comes on, and you got the piano. Doom, 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 doom. It's just the best opening. It makes me sit back and go, yes, this is going to be great. It sets the mood for the album. And then the song kicks in, and then the vocals come in, and then it goes back to that opening. Doom, 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 doom. And then the jam session comes out of nowhere, and it's a jam session of the rhythm section going off. There's no big Freebird kind of guitar solo or anything. The organ and the piano is doing a little bit of soloing, but it's just mostly like a Stonesy, hard-hitting jam session. And then, thank God, it doesn't fade out. It ends on a single note, like a song like that should. Then No Wheels to Ride comes on, and it's my second favorite Mott The Hoople song next to Thunderbuck Ram. And it's the kind of song where I go, I don't know what he's singing about, but damn, it sounds important the way he's singing it. And the reality is he's mostly singing about not being able to afford bus fare to go see his chick. Oh, I wish I didn't read too much into the lyrics, but it sounds so important. It makes me feel like I'm in a cool church, the song. And then, it's jamming. It's got the soulful guitar solo. And then Ian comes back. He comes back singing, I got more important things to say about not being able to afford my bus fare. And you're like, yes, I'll give you the money. What is it? $1.33? You Are One of Us is the third song. Now I got to ask you, Martin, between you and me, in the since this is Mott The Hoople, between you and me and the 52 people watching this video, have you ever done one of these, like in you're building up to before the video, doing all your studying and everything, and you decided which album you're going to talk about as your favorite? Have you ever gone, did I pick the right album? Maybe this truly isn't my favorite. Have you ever done that?
That happened. We did an interesting Sea of Tranquility once where it's like the whole concept was, I always call this one of my favorite albums by this band, but now I realize it's only because of like 3 songs on it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Same
well,
kind of thing. Yeah.
The third song in, listening to this again, I picked the right one. Yes, I did. It was cemented in. Yeah. Love this song. And the organ, the big organ sound in this song sounds like Garth Hudson from the band and the things he would be doing on The Last Waltz 6 years after this album. Walking with the Mountain. Don't tell me this ain't a gospel rock album. Walking with the Mountain. It sounds like a metaphor, spiritual metaphor, like you're going to go find Jesus or something like that. And then in a Mott The Hoople fashion, they throw the curveball. And as they're doing Walking with the Mountain, they go Jumpin' Jack Flash. It's a gas. Where did that come from? And it works. It works so well. And they only do it for a few lines. They don't do the whole song of the Rolling Stones. And then it ends with this big guitar solo that maybe like Fish would do in the 90s. Fish with a PH, not Fish from Marillion, just so we're all on the same page. Now, side 2, I Can Feel. And they're slowing things down. And it's a beautiful song. It's got backup singers. This song reminds me of Elton John's The Border song. It's that big, that beautiful with the chorus and the backup singers. And Ian's voice tears my heart out in this song. Again, is it perfect? No, but it's emotion. And I would not want this song sung by a pitch perfect singer. It would ruin it. And one thing about this song is, you listen to the CD. I have the CD and the vinyl. And after the first 4 songs are rocking out, it's nice to come down with I Can Feel. It's welcomed. On the vinyl, when it's the first song on side 2, you're like, yes, yes. And then you flip it and you put the needle down. Like, oh, side 2 is starting off on a bummer. But on CD, it works. Threads of Iron. It has the You Are What You Are melody that I just love. And it's got Jerry Lee Lewis style piano playing. You could tell that Ian was a big Jerry Lee Lewis fan. And this album can be very quiet at times and be very noisy within the same song at times, like this. And it ends in a manner where the instruments, everything is going nuts. What it sounds like is Mott The Hoople's tour bus got in an accident and is rolling down a hill, and all the instruments are going cling, 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 but in a very cool way.
Yeah.
I love it. And then when my mind's gone, it's pretty much just Ian Hunter, the piano, and his heart on a platter. Does his voice crack in this song? Yes, it cracks in all the right places. I think it's his best performance in the song. I wrote down his voice is hanging on a thin thread somewhere between hope and loss, somewhere between looking forward to the future and regretting your past. So, yeah, this is a perfect album for me, believe it or not. I did not know of this album in February of 2020, but now it has worked its way into my top 30 to 40 favorite albums of all time. Wow. Another list that's pretty concrete, for the last 30 years. So yeah, I have all the albums. I got the box set. I got the t-shirt. They're live albums in my top 20 of all time now. This album is one of my favorite albums of all time. I hope I won enough people over watching this that I have enough cred to talk about this band, because no one else was going to step up to this anyways. So it was me or nobody.
Yeah.
So there you go. I know the band's not a big fan of that album, Matt Shadows. I know All Music gave it 2 stars, and I don't get it. It brings me to tears sometimes when I listen to it. Tears inside, not outside. So go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I love that. Was a beautiful analysis, and I love the idea when you frame it as sort of a gospel album, because you get that from the Bob Dylan end of it. You even get that from the Stones end of it. Really, this is Mott The Hoople is almost like a mainline side baby band. Accessing of Exile on Main Street in a lot of ways, right? I mean, it really feels like that is obviously one of their big influences. There's a lot of David Bowie to what goes on with this band as well, but not quite at this point. At this point, you're right. It's a little darker. It's a little murkier. It's a little less accessible. Definitely less poppy, but it's got the famous songs on it. I mean, definitely Thunderbuck Ram and Walking with a Mountain are big songs by this band. And in terms of tour statistics, we always look at that on the Contrarians. That's the only song. Walking with a Mountain is the only song. It comes in third out of this entire thing in terms of Mott The Hoople songs that are played live. Our Contrarians Patreons, we asked them for their votes. Tyson Brown said Mott as favorite. Joe Beck said All the Young Dudes. Noel Ambler was with all the young dudes. Michael Chalmers was with All the Young Dudes. Peter J. Brown, The Debut. Paul Zazicki, The Hoople. Nick Esquire, The Hoople. Ryan went with all the young dudes. Ryan Gavalier, he's got his own channel started up. Pretty exciting. George Eliezer went with The Hoople, and the Music Nut went with Brain Capers. And really, I started looking at all the sort of stats around. And number one, you're right. I mean, another big theme about this band is that everybody knows those albums. They've been in their collections forever, but nobody really thinks about them very much or talks about them very much. And this is one of these episodes. We've done many, many of these regular Contrarians episodes. This is one where you actually can't find that many album rankings out there, which is bizarre, because this is a band from 69 through to 74 with like 7 albums. And yet no one really talks about them much, right?
And you said one time that you kind of determine how popular or important an album is by how much writing there is on the Wikipedia about that album.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked this up, and because I've seen this image before before I became a big fan, and I went on the Wikipedia, and there's like one little paragraph. I'm like, really? Doesn't it deserve more than that?
Yeah. Pretty bizarre. Yeah. The Steve Hoffman forum, which there's always good discussion over there, went with Mott as the favorite. And like I say, it is my favorite as well. Definitely when you look at All the Way from Memphis, I think is the greatest song they ever did. I mean, that just such a gorgeously put together song. And then you hear basically Ian Hunter in his solo career taking that idea to the bank. That's one of, exactly. I love these records even more than the Mott records. And I've owned all these Mott records forever, and I even have a hard time.
What do you think of the Mott records?
They're pretty cool too. And they remind me of a little bit of like a histrionic Mott The Hoople with a little bit of Steve Marriott to it. Obviously they go on, we get British Lions later, and we get Widowmaker later. And those two records, I remember as a kid, were universally reviled. People hated those two records when they came out. They were so badly reviewed, right?
This didn't even chart.
Yeah,
shouting and pointing.
Oh yeah, as I say of many records, kings of the delete bin. Those were always in the delete bins. They were always available for cheap, right? Louder Sound rated Mott the best as well. Then Brain Capers, then All the Young Dudes. The next tier of they were kind of breaking it up into the tiers. They had the Hoople and Mad Shadows there, and I looked all over Facebook, and we had our I asked on Facebook as well, and I just got a huge range of albums. But I think if we were to really net out some trends from all this, you're definitely contrarian with Mad Shadows, but really from Brain Capers on all the way to the end, all of those come out, up and down all over the place. So that's kind of all I got. Kind of an interesting situation, an interesting band with, I think if you were to get in an elevator and give the elevator pitch on this band, you would say they have 4 or 5 directions, and they do those kind of over and over, and they're Bowie and they're Dylan and they're Stones and they're glam, essentially. Across what they do. And the Stonesy thing that they do is almost every heavy song that they do is like a heavy version of the Stones or Bad Company. I mean, they do a lot of the slow, sludgy, heavy stuff that you get in some of those heavier Bad Company songs as well. And that's, of course, the Mick Ralph's connection there. So I don't know. Any final thoughts?
Well, I hope, sometimes people watch a video just because, they like you, Martin. They may not know the band. And I hope they tuned in, and I hope they go check out the band because of tuning in. And if you do, you can get this little box set here. They make 1 million of these for different bands. Like 17 American dollars. It's got all the young dudes, Mott and the Hoople, and then the 2 Mott albums. Good starting point. $17, try it out, and if you like it, move on to other things. Mott the Hoople. By the way, a book Guy Stevens was reading, Mott the Hoople. Hoople was a slang for a loser, and Mott was the loser in the book.
William Manus, and apparently he was in jail when he came up with that idea. I think he was reading the book. William Manus. Yeah, Guy
Stevens. From what I've heard about him, he seemed like the kind of guy that you would really love, or you would get irritated with him very quickly.
Yeah. I remember the stories about him doing London Calling, where he would throw chairs around and stuff to get the band excited to do their takes and things.
Mick Jones, big fan. He said if there was no Mott the Hoople, there would have been no Clash, or at least no Mick Jones as we know him.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point too. When I asked on Facebook as well about opinions of this band, a lot of people said big influence on punk. Kind of makes sense. One funny comment in the Facebook said, "I can't stand Mott the Hoople. Every time Ian Hunter sings, it sounds like he's being stabbed to death." I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just proud of the Contrarians for knowing enough about the band to have opinions.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thanks very much, Jamie. That was absolutely awesome. Let us know in the comments below what you guys think of Mott the Hoople and Jamie's pick with Mad Shadows here. Of course, we have a Patreon situation as well if you want to support us, and we do a lot of and we do a lot of panels. We've been doing these Dark Horse panels, which I find really interesting, and we've been putting those first on Patreon exclusive, but then putting them on YouTube as well, because they're really interesting, where we get a big panel together. So there you go. For myself and Jamie, we shall sign off. Go listen to some Mott the Hoople.